The sun was barely up when the bus rolled into Fort Bragg, its tires crunching over gravel, carrying a handful of new recruits who all looked the same, nervous, excited, trying to hide both. Among them sat Evan Carter, a 19-year-old kid from Montana, whose entire life had been dirt roads, open skies, and the whisper of wind through wheat fields. He pressed his forehead against the window, watching the mist rise off the training grounds, and wondered if this was where boys really became men, or where men were broken down to nothing. When the bus stopped, the door hissed open, and the sharp voice of a drill sergeant cut through the morning air like a whip. "Move it! Off the bus! Let's see what kind of heroes we've got today." Evan slung his duffel bag over his shoulder, stepping down into the bright Carolina sunlight. Around him, recruits scrambled to line up, some wide-eyed, some pretending not to be terrified. But Evan just stood still for a second, breathing it all in. The smell of gun oil, the faint metallic tang in the air. Somewhere far away, he heard gunfire from the practice range. Pop, pop, pop. It was the sound of purpose. A black SUV pulled up near the field, sleek and silent. From it stepped General Marcus Harlan, a name whispered with a mix of reverence and fear. He was a legend, a soldier who had led men through 3 wars and had the scars to prove it. His presence carried a weight that made conversations die mid-sentence. Harlan's uniform was spotless, his medals glinting faintly in the sun. He walked past the new recruits with slow, assessing eyes, as if scanning for weakness. His stare landed on Evan. Name? "Private Evan Carter, sir." "Montana?" Harlan's brow furrowed. "You don't look like soldier material. You a farmhand?" "Yes, sir," Evan replied. "Before this." Harlan grunted. "Figures. The farm boys always think they can shoot." He moved on without another word. The word stung, but Evan didn't show it. He was used to being underestimated. Back home, people said he was too quiet, too strange. But they hadn't seen him lying on his belly at dusk, rifle in hand, watching a coyote half a mile away through his father's old scope, waiting for the wind to speak before he took the shot. By the afternoon, sweat soaked through every recruit's uniform. They ran obstacle courses, crawled through mud, and fired at targets under a blistering sun. The air was thick with curses and exhaustion. Harlan watched from a distance, arms crossed. His instructors shouted commands while he silently observed who would crumble first. When his gaze fell on Evan again, he saw something unexpected. The boy wasn't the fastest, nor the strongest, but he never slowed down. Every order was followed with calm precision. During rifle qualification, Harlan decided to test him. "Carter," he barked. "Let's see if those farm instincts are good for something. Target to 800 meters." The other recruits glanced at each other. That was twice the standard distance. Even seasoned shooters missed that mark. Evan took his position. The rifle felt solid in his hands, heavier than the hunting rifle he'd used back home, but familiar enough. He adjusted his scope slowly, tuning out the whispers behind him. "Whenever you're ready, rookie," Harlan said, his tone half mocking. Evan's breathing slowed. He felt the faint wind brushing against his cheek, shifting right to left. He counted heartbeats, adjusted for drift, and squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked through the air, echoing across the range. The target, a small metal silhouette, pinned dead center. A few heads turned. No one spoke. Harlan's jaw tightened. "Try again," he said. Evan reloaded, adjusted again, and fired. Another perfect hit. The general's eyes narrowed, searching for any sign of luck or trickery, but there was none. The rookie didn't even smile. He just waited for the next command, calm as the still air between storms. That night, as the others lounged in the mess hall, bragging and laughing, Evan stayed back at the range. The sky stretched wide and dark above him, a sea of stars, broken only by the soft glow of the lamps near the shooting lanes. He set up new targets, smaller this time, farther away. His arms ached, his eyes burned, but he welcomed it. Pain meant growth. Every shot was a conversation between him and the wind. "Can't sleep either?" A voice called softly. It was Sergeant Elena Ruiz, one of the senior instructors, sharp-tongued but fair. She approached with her rifle, slung casually over her shoulder. Evan smiled faintly. "Just trying to get better." Ruiz studied him for a moment. "Most rookies spend their first week trying not to quit. You spend yours trying to outshoot ghosts." Evan chuckled under his breath. "My dad taught me to shoot when I was 9. He said every bullet has a purpose. If you miss, it's because you didn't listen." "Did he serve?" she asked. Evan nodded. "He was under General Harlan once. Died in Afghanistan." Ruiz's expression softened. "So that's why you're here." Evan looked at the horizon, the faint outline of the forest barely visible in the night. "I just want to see if I'm made of the same stuff." The next morning, word of Evan's perfect shots spread through the barracks. Some recruits congratulated him. Others rolled their eyes. But Harlan didn't forget, and he didn't believe. In the general's office, he stood looking at a faded photograph of his old unit, a younger version of himself, beside a soldier who looked strikingly like Evan, Carter. He muttered, "That boy's father saved my life once. And now his kid thinks he can walk in here and be a hero." He slammed the frame face down. That afternoon, Harlan summoned the squad for a surprise exercise, the Gauntlet, a brutal endurance course combining marksmanship, navigation, and survival. "You think you're soldiers?" he barked. "Let's find out." The recruits groaned, but none dared protest. By the third hour, men were dropping from exhaustion. The sun blazed mercilessly, turning sweat to salt and dust. When they reached the final stage, a live fire simulation, Harlan gave them near impossible parameters. Targets appeared at random distances, hidden in shadows. Evan's rifle barked again and again, every shot deliberate, clean. When his ammo ran out, he hit his last target dead center, over 900 meters away. Harlan checked the results board. No one else had even come close. "Carter," he shouted across the field. "What in God's name do you think you're doing? Showing off?" Evan, breathing hard, met his gaze. "Just doing my job, sir." The general stared at him for a long moment, unreadable. Then he turned sharply and walked away. But deep down, something had shifted, a flicker of unease, maybe even curiosity. Because in all his years, Harlan had never seen a rookie shoot like that. That night, thunder rolled in from the distance. Rain hammered the barracks roof. Evan lay on his bunk, staring at the ceiling, muscles aching, mind restless. He thought of his father's photograph tucked inside his locker, the same uniform, the same patch, and the same quiet stare that seemed to say, "You're not there yet, son." He closed his eyes and whispered into the dark, "I'll make you proud, Dad. I'll make him believe." Outside, lightning split the sky over Fort Bragg. Somewhere in the storm, fate was already moving, setting in motion the test that would change everything, the moment when a quiet boy from Montana would be asked to do the impossible. Morning came with the sound of distant gunfire and marching boots echoing across the base. The air smelled like oil and dust, the perfume of discipline. For most of the recruits, today was just another day of drills and shouting. For Evan Carter, it was another chance to prove that what happened yesterday wasn't luck. He woke before dawn, polished his boots, and ran laps around the training field. By the time the sun broke through the gray clouds, he was already drenched in sweat. To the others, his early rising looked like desperation. But Evan didn't care how it looked. He cared only about the rhythm of improvement. When the squad assembled on the range, General Harlan was already there, his hands clasped behind his back. His presence carried the same cold weight as a thundercloud. Beside him stood Sergeant Elena Ruiz, clipboard in hand, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. "Listen up," Harlan barked, his voice slicing through the chatter. "Today's not just about accuracy. It's about consistency, precision under pressure. You'll shoot at increasing distances until you fail. When you fail, you're done. Understood?" A chorus of "Yes, sir" erupted. Evan took his place among the line of shooters. Sweat rolled down his neck as he loaded his rifle. The targets were lined up to 100 meters, 200, 400, 600, and finally 1,000 meters, barely visible dots against the horizon. Harlan's eyes fell on Evan again. "Carter," he said dryly, "since you seem to enjoy making a spectacle of yourself, you'll go last. Let's see if lightning strikes twice." The others smirked. The unspoken challenge hung in the air. One by one, the recruits stepped up. Some hit the early marks easily. Others fell apart halfway. The sharp cracks of gunfire echoed, followed by curses, cheers, or sighs. When it was finally Evan's turn, the range had gone quiet, too quiet. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. He walked to the firing position calmly, set down his rifle, and adjusted his prone position. He could feel eyes burning into him, the general's doubt, the squad's curiosity, Ruiz's quiet hope. Evan chambered around and steadied his breathing. The world around him began to fade. No more murmurs, no footsteps, just the steady thump of his own pulse. Crack! The first shot hit dead center at 100 meters. No one reacted. That was expected. The second, 200 meters, another perfect hit. By 400 meters, the whispers started. At 600, even the instructors leaned forward. Then came the final target, 1,000 meters. The wind picked up, swirling dust across the range. Evan adjusted, his movements slow, precise. He remembered his father's voice. "Don't fight the wind, son. Dance with it." He squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked. A second later, the metallic ping rang out from the distant target, a perfect bullseye. For a moment, no one moved. The silence was total. Then came the murmurs, low, astonished, disbelieving. Did he just... dead center again? No way, that's impossible. Harlan's expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened. He stepped forward, his boots crunching on the gravel, and looked through the spotting scope himself. Dead center, not once, but twice. The rookie had repeated his fluke. The general's lips pressed into a hard line. Everyone back to the barracks. "Carter, stay." The recruits scattered quickly, still whispering. Ruiz lingered a moment, giving Evan an encouraging nod before following the others. When they were alone, Harlan folded his arms. "You think this is a game?" "No, sir." "Then how do you explain that shot? Twice now, you've pulled off something most trained marksmen couldn't dream of doing. You cheat somehow?" Evan's eyes didn't waver. "No, sir. Just did what I was taught." Harlan's tone sharpened. "By who?" "My father." The general froze for a moment. The name Carter flickered through his mind again. Flashes of a dusty battlefield, a soldier dragging him to safety, gunfire all around. But he buried the memory just as fast. "Your father was reckless," Harlan said coldly. "A good shot, but too much heart. That'll get you killed faster than poor aim." Evan didn't respond. He simply nodded. "Dismissed," Harlan said, turning away. "And Carter? Luck doesn't last forever." Evan saluted and left, his face calm, but his heart pounded. He knew that look in the general's eyes, not disbelief, but the faint glimmer of something else. Fear of being proven wrong. Later that evening, the barracks buzzed with talk of Evan's feat. 2 perfect 1,000-meter hits? One soldier said. That's sniper-level precision. Sniper? He's barely out of diapers, another joked. Still, the laughter had changed tone. Less mocking, more uneasy. Evan stayed silent, cleaning his rifle by his bunk. Across the room, a fellow recruit named Daniels approached. "Hey, Montana," he said, half grinning. "What's your secret? You make a deal with the devil?" Evan smiled faintly. "No deal. Just practice." Daniels chuckled, shaking his head. "You're something else, man. The general's not going to forget that any time soon." He was right. 2 days later, Harlan summoned Sergeant Ruiz to his office. "You've been keeping an eye on Carter, haven't you?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "He's disciplined, quiet, no signs of overconfidence. Just focused." Harlan grunted. "Focused can be dangerous, especially when they start believing their own legend." "With respect, sir," Ruiz said carefully. "What if it's not legend?" The general looked up, his sharp blue eyes narrowing. "Are you telling me you believe in miracles, Sergeant?" "No, sir," Ruiz said with a small smile. "Just good soldiers." That afternoon, Harlan organized another field test, this one unannounced. The recruits were ordered into the training grounds for what they thought was a standard drill. Instead, Harlan stood at the far end, waiting with a challenge. "You're all soldiers," he began, "but soldiers are made in chaos, not comfort. So today, we'll see how you handle the unexpected." He gestured toward a series of distant, moving targets barely visible against the tree line. "You'll fire during a wind shift, in motion, under noise distraction. Real combat conditions. Let's see who's got steady nerves." The squad lined up. Explosions from simulated grenades erupted, smoke billowed, and loudspeakers blasted helicopter sounds. It was chaos, exactly as Harlan intended. Evan watched, analyzing wind direction, timing, and rhythm. When his turn came, he didn't rush. Through the smoke, he saw the target flicker in and out of sight. His world narrowed again. Everything else faded away. He let the chaos guide him instead of fight it. He fired 3 times. 3 perfect hits. When the smoke cleared, the instructors confirmed the results. The squad stared in disbelief. Harlan's expression hardened, but his silence said more than any words could. The test was over, but something in the general's world had shifted again. A small, invisible crack forming in his wall of certainty. That night, Evan sat alone at the range again. Rain drizzled softly, tapping against the metal roof. He adjusted his sights, then stopped, staring out into the darkness. He thought of his father again, the man who taught him that shooting wasn't about killing, but about listening. About patience, control, and respect. "Dad," he whispered, "he doesn't believe I can do it. But one day, he will." Behind him, Sergeant Ruiz approached quietly. "You keep talking to ghosts, Carter?" She teased. He smiled without turning. "Sometimes ghosts make better company." Ruiz crossed her arms, watching him for a long moment. "The general's testing you," she said softly. "He wants you to break. I know. And if you don't?" Evan chambered around, took aim into the dark, and fired. The bullet struck a target no one else could even see. Then maybe he'll start believing. Back in his quarters, General Harlan sat in silence, staring at the same old photograph, him and John Carter, smiling after a successful operation decades ago. The next morning, he would receive orders for a mission that would test not just the boy, but everything Harlan himself believed about courage, skill, and the human spirit. And though he didn't know it yet, that mission would become legend, the one where a rookie made a shot no one thought was humanly possible. Rain hammered against the windows of the operations room at Fort Bragg, thunder echoing in the distance like faraway gunfire. General Marcus Harlan stood over a glowing table, where a satellite image of a war-torn valley flickered in grainy detail. Around him, senior officers whispered in low, uncertain tones. Every man in the room knew what they were looking at, an assignment no one wanted. The briefing was short and brutal. A high-value target, codenamed Spectre, had resurfaced in a hostile region halfway across the globe. Intelligence claimed he was orchestrating attacks against U.S. forces and had eluded capture for years. Now, finally, he was pinned down in an abandoned compound surrounded by rugged cliffs. But the window was narrow, less than 24 hours before he vanished again. Harlan's jaw tightened as the mission parameters were displayed. Extraction zone is 6 clicks from the target. Hostiles are heavy, terrain unstable. Satellite recon shows fortified ridges. We'll need surgical precision. A lieutenant muttered under his breath, more like suicide. Harlan ignored him. He scanned the roster of available units, his eyes stopping on one unfamiliar name, Private Evan Carter. He almost skipped it. Almost. But something, curiosity, pride, maybe stubborn defiance, made him pause. The rookie had proved he could shoot. Now, Harlan wanted to know if he could survive. Sergeant Ruiz, he said, looking up. Put Carter on the team? Ruiz blinked. Sir? He's not field certified yet. Then consider this his final exam, Harlan replied flatly. If he's as good as people say, let's find out. Ruiz hesitated, but one look at the general's expression told her the decision was final. The next morning, the hangar buzzed with movement. Helicopter blades whirred, soldiers checked gear, and the smell of diesel mixed with adrenaline. Evan Carter stood beside his rucksack, tightening the strap on his rifle. His expression was calm, but inside, nerves twisted through him like coiled wire. Sergeant Ruiz approached, helmet under her arm. You sure you're ready for this, rookie? I don't think anyone's ever ready, he said. She smirked. Good answer. Just remember out there, one mistake costs lives. Stay sharp, stay quiet. General Harlan walked past them, barking final orders. When his eyes met Evan's, they held for a moment, the same cold, testing stare. This isn't a shooting range, Carter, Harlan said. There's no reset button. You follow my orders to the letter. Understood? Yes, sir. Then let's go make history, Harlan muttered, more to himself than anyone. The helicopters lifted off, slicing through the gray dawn. Below them stretched a sea of mountains, scarred and endless. The mission was to infiltrate the valley, confirm the target's identity, and eliminate him before exfil. Simple on paper, deadly in practice. Inside the aircraft, the team sat in silence. The rhythmic thump of rotor blades was their only soundtrack. Evan glanced around. Each soldier looked carved from stone, veterans hardened by years of combat. He was the only rookie, the outsider among legends. One of the older snipers, a scarred man named Willis, leaned over. You the kid who hit the 1,000-meter mark? Evan nodded. Willis chuckled. Well, kid, hope you can do it again when it counts. Paper targets don't shoot back. Evan smiled faintly, but said nothing. He just looked out the window, watching the terrain shift beneath them. Endless valleys, ridges, and rivers winding like veins through the earth. Somewhere down there waited their target, and maybe fate itself. Hours later, they landed under cover of darkness. The valley was eerily silent, broken only by the distant howl of wind sweeping through the cliffs. Harlan gathered the squad near the landing zone. We move fast, stay low, and make no noise. Carter, you're with Ruiz. You cover the rear. If this goes south, I don't want your bodies slowing us down. Clear? Evan nodded, though the sting of the words burned. They set off through the shadows, their boots silent on the rocky ground. The air was cold, thin, and full of tension. Every rustle of leaves made hearts race. For 2 hours, they moved undetected, ghosts in enemy territory. Then suddenly, gunfire erupted. Crack, crack, crack. Bullets ripped through the night. Someone screamed. Chaos exploded. Ambush! Willis shouted. The team dove for cover behind boulders, returning fire blindly. Tracer rounds lit the darkness like red lightning. Evan hit the dirt, heart pounding. He scanned through his scope, spotting muzzle flashes along a ridge. 3 hostiles moving fast. He steadied his rifle, breathed, and fired. 1, 2, 3. Each shot found its mark. Clear on the ridge. Ruiz called out. Harlan looked up sharply, surprised. The rookie had reacted faster than half his team. But before he could process it, the radio crackled with static. Command, this is Alpha Team. We're pinned down. Multiple casualties. Copy that, Harlan barked. Fall back and regroup at Point Echo. They moved quickly, bullets snapping past their heads. One soldier stumbled, hit in the leg. Evan grabbed his arm, hauling him up without hesitation. Leave him! Someone yelled. Not happening. Evan shouted back, dragging the man through the mud. When they finally reached cover, the wounded soldier was pale but alive. Harlan knelt beside him, pressing down on the bleeding wound. He looked up at Evan. Good work, Carter, he said quietly, the first words of respect he'd ever spoken to him. By dawn, the gunfire had stopped. Smoke curled from the distance. The enemy force scattered. The team regrouped, battered but intact. Harlan stood on a ridge, binoculars in hand. Through the haze, he could see the target compound, a crumbling fortress nestled between cliffs. There it is, he murmured. The ghost's nest. Ruiz joined him. That's nearly 2 clicks away, sir. We'd have to cross open ground. Then we'll do it smart, Harlan replied. No mistakes. He turned to the team. We move at nightfall. Carter, you're on overwatch with Willis. If we're spotted, your job is to buy us time. You understand what that means? Evan nodded. Don't miss. That night, they set out again under a blanket of darkness. The valley was colder now, the kind of cold that seeped into bones. Evan crawled into position with Willis, setting up on a ridge overlooking the compound. Through the scope, he could see the faint outlines of armed guards patrolling the walls. Inside, lights flickered. Their target was in there somewhere. Willis chewed on a piece of gum, squinting through his binoculars. You ever take a shot this far, kid? Not under fire, Evan admitted. Willis grinned. Good. First time for everything. They waited, silent, motionless, the seconds stretching into hours. At exactly 0200 hours, the compound's main gate opened. A group of men stepped out, one taller than the rest, their target. Harlan's voice came over the radio, calm but urgent. Visual confirmed. Do not engage. We move in 10. Then static. Evan frowned, tapping his earpiece. The signal was fading. The mountains were blocking comms. He turned to Willis, but the veteran's face had gone still. From the corner of his scope, Evan saw movement, shadows gathering near the cliffs behind the team's position. The enemy was circling them. His pulse quickened. He grabbed the radio. Sir, you're compromised. Enemies closing in from the west ridge. But there was no reply. Ruiz's voice finally came through, faint and broken. Carter. Hold position. Cover. Static swallowed the rest. Evan's eyes darted between the compound and the ridge. Every instinct screamed at him to move, to act, to protect his team. He looked at Willis. "We can't wait." Willis hesitated, then nodded grimly. "Do what you have to, kid." Evan steadied his rifle. The night seemed to hold its breath. Through the crosshairs, he saw the enemy closing in, dark shapes moving fast. His finger brushed the trigger. The world shrank to one heartbeat, one breath, one decision. He squeezed. The shot cracked through the valley like thunder. And with it, the impossible mission had truly begun. The echo of Evan's shot rolled through the valley like an awakening storm. For a second, nothing moved, just the whispering wind and the soft clatter of his rifle bolt resetting. Then, as if the world itself exhaled in shock, all hell broke loose. Gunfire erupted from the ridges. Muzzle flashes flickered like fireflies, gone mad. The enemy, alerted by the gunshot, unleashed a rain of bullets toward the American positions. Dust exploded around Evan's perch. He and Willis ducked low, pressing into the earth. "Damn it, rookie!" Willis shouted over the roar. "You just rang the dinner bell." "I didn't have a choice." Evan shouted back, eyes locked on his scope again. They were flanking the general. They would have been wiped out. Willis cursed under his breath, but didn't argue. He knew the kid was right. Through the chaos, they could see movement below. The rest of Harlan's team caught in a crossfire near the valley floor. General Harlan's voice crackled through the comms, finally cutting through the static. "Carter, what the hell did you do?" Evan's breathing was sharp, focused. "Sir, enemy units breached your perimeter. I neutralized the lead scout, but never mind explanations." Harlan snapped. "Just cover our withdrawal." The line went dead. Then came the sound of machine guns thundering in the distance. Evan steadied his rifle again. One shot, 2 shots, 3, each fired with the calm precision of a surgeon. Every enemy that peeked over the ridge dropped before they could return fire. The rookie was a ghost behind the trigger. Willis glanced at him between reloads. "You ever miss?" Evan didn't answer. He just lined up another shot and pulled the trigger. The crack of his rifle was answer enough. Down below, Harlan and Sergeant Ruiz pushed forward through the chaos, leading what remained of the team toward cover. Bullets tore through trees, rocks shattered around them, and the air reeked of gunpowder. "Carter's covering us," Ruiz yelled, pointing up toward the ridge. "He's keeping them pinned." Harlan looked up through the smoke and dust. He could barely make out the shape of 2 figures on the hill, one crouched, one firing relentlessly. For the first time, a flicker of respect crossed his face. Maybe the kid wasn't just lucky. Maybe he was something different. Minutes turned into an eternity. The firefight raged across the valley, flashes of light in a sea of darkness. But slowly, with precise coordination and Evan's unerring cover fire, the team managed to fall back to a defensible ridge. Then, without warning, the radio blared with an urgent voice. "This is command. Reinforcements inbound, ETA 20 minutes. Hold your ground. 20 minutes. It might as well have been 20 years. "Carter," Harlan barked into the radio. "We're pinned near the ravine. You have eyes on us?" Evan scanned the terrain. Through his scope, he spotted them huddled behind a broken wall halfway down the valley. Outnumbered, surrounded, desperate. Between them and safety lay at least 30 enemy combatants. "I see you," he said quietly. "Then do something about it." Harlan roared. Evan exhaled, slow and steady. "Copy that." He adjusted his scope, compensating for wind and distance. The ridge was treacherous, the angle unforgiving, but his hands were steady. He began firing, rhythmically, methodically, every bullet finding its mark. One by one, the enemies fell, confusion spreading through their ranks. Willis whistled softly. "Kid, you're rewriting the sniper's manual." But then, a sudden explosion tore through the ground near them. The ridge shook violently. Willis was thrown backward, his helmet tumbling off. Evan crawled toward him, coughing through the dust. "Willis, you good?" Willis groaned, clutching his shoulder. "Just grazed. But we gotta move. They've got mortar now." Evan looked down the slope. The enemy was triangulating their position. They'd be zeroed in any second. He grabbed his radio again. "General, they've got eyes on us. We're pulling back." "Negative." Harlan's voice was hard as steel. "You hold that ridge, or we're finished down here." Evan hesitated, caught between obedience and survival. Then he made his choice. "Copy," he said, settling behind the rifle again. Willis stared at him. "You're out of your damn mind, kid." "Maybe," Evan replied, "but we're not losing anyone today." He stayed on the ridge, alone now, as Willis crawled back to find cover. The next 10 minutes were a blur of chaos, thunderous explosions, gunfire, and dust choking the air. Evan's rifle grew hot against his shoulder, his ammo dwindling, but he never stopped. Every trigger pull was another heartbeat, another second bought for his team. Below, Harlan and Ruiz moved their squad inch by inch toward the extraction zone. "Carter's still firing," Ruiz shouted. "He's drawing them off us." Harlan gritted his teeth. "That fool kid's going to get himself killed." But deep down, something twisted in his chest, guilt or admiration, he couldn't tell. The rookie wasn't just following orders anymore. He was fighting like a man who refused to let anyone down. As dawn crept over the mountains, the last of the enemy fire began to fade. The valley fell eerily quiet again, the air thick with smoke. Reinforcements finally roared in, helicopters sweeping over the ridges, laying down suppressive fire. "Alpha Team, fall back," came the command. "All units evacuate." Harlan's squad ran toward the waiting choppers. But as they reached the clearing, Ruiz stopped short. "Where's Carter?" Harlan froze. He looked back toward the smoking ridge, high above the valley floor. A faint silhouette stood there, rifle slung over his shoulder, scanning for movement. The kid was still covering them, refusing to leave until the last man was safe. Ruiz grabbed the general's arm. "We can't leave him." Harlan's instincts screamed to go back, but every second they stayed risked everyone's lives. The helicopter pilot's voice crackled through the headset. "We're out of time, sir." "We gotta move now." The general's jaw clenched. "One more minute," he ordered. Through his binoculars, he watched the rookie kneel one last time, aim, and fire. A single shot. The final echo bounced across the valley. Then Evan stood up, breathing hard, silhouetted against the morning light, a lone figure on a battlefield that had nearly consumed them all. "Come on, Carter," Harlan whispered. "Run." The rookie turned and began descending the ridge, stumbling from exhaustion, his gear torn, face streaked with dirt. Behind him, smoke rose like ghosts. When he finally reached the clearing, the helicopter's rotors whipped the air into a frenzy. Harlan stepped forward, grabbing his arm, helping him climb aboard. Evan collapsed into the seat, chest heaving. He gave a faint grin. "Told you I could hold it." Harlan looked at him for a long moment. The kid's eyes raw with fatigue, but burning with something deeper. Determination, heart. The general nodded. "You didn't just hold it, son," he said quietly. "You saved us all." The helicopter lifted off, rising above the scorched valley. Below, the battlefield stretched in silence, the scars of the fight fading beneath the rising sun. That morning, back at the base, The mission was logged as a success. Spectre had escaped once more, but dozens of American lives had been saved, thanks to one impossible shot and one rookie who refused to quit. As Evan sat outside the med bay, bandaged but alive, he saw the general approaching. For the first time, Harlan didn't look like the unshakable icon he'd been in every rumor and story. He looked human, tired, thoughtful. He handed Evan a folded piece of paper, a commendation request. "For bravery under fire," he said simply. Evan blinked. "Sir, I was just doing my job." Harlan gave a faint smile. "Maybe, but sometimes doing your job is what legends are made of." He turned to leave, but before he did, he paused. "Carter," he added, "next time I say something can't be done, remind me of tonight." Evan smiled. "Yes, sir." The general walked away, his silhouette fading into the morning light, the weight of his old doubts gone, replaced by something new: belief. The sun was barely up when Fort Bragg's sirens blared, announcing the return of the strike team. Exhausted soldiers stumbled off the helicopters, faces smeared with dust and fatigue. Medics rushed in, guiding the wounded toward the triage tents. General Marcus Harlan stepped down last, his boots hitting the concrete with a hollow thud. The mission was over, technically a success, though Spectre had escaped. Still, the brass would call it a victory. The casualty count was minimal, the extraction complete. But for Harlan, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. He watched as Private Evan Carter was led off the chopper, limping slightly, his uniform torn and streaked with dried blood. Reporters and photographers were already crowding the perimeter fence, flashes bursting through the chain link like fireworks. News had traveled fast, faster than Harlan expected. A young lieutenant jogged up, saluting. "Sir, Washington's already on the line. They want a debrief in 30 minutes. "Tell them they can wait," Harlan said, his voice like gravel. The lieutenant hesitated. "Sir, I said wait." Harlan turned away, his eyes following Carter, who was now being ushered into the med tent. Inside, the smell of antiseptic mixed with the low hum of machines. Carter sat on a cot, wincing as a medic wrapped his arm. His face was pale, but his eyes burned with restless energy, the kind that couldn't decide between pride and disbelief. Sergeant Ruiz walked in, arms crossed, helmet tucked under one arm. "You did good out there, kid," she said. "Scared the hell out of us, but good." Carter gave a tired smile. "That's not really how I pictured my first mission." "Yeah, well," she said, smirking, "welcome to the Army. Nothing ever goes as planned." He chuckled softly, but then his eyes fell. "I thought we were going to lose people." "I thought." Ruiz's tone softened. "You didn't lose anyone. That's what matters. You kept your head when everyone else was losing theirs. That's something even the general can't ignore." Carter looked up, unsure whether to believe that. The general still intimidated him more than any firefight could. A few hours later, Harlan walked into the press briefing room. The walls buzzed with tension. Journalists shouted questions, cameras clicked, and officials in suits whispered about optics. The mission had leaked, and the narrative was already taking shape. A young private had made an impossible shot, saving his unit and the general himself from annihilation. The rookie sniper had become an instant hero. Harlan hated this part. The politics, the noise, the vultures who turned blood and bravery into headlines. A colonel from the Pentagon stood at the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to hear is a story of courage under fire," he began, gesturing toward a photo of Carter projected on the screen. Private Evan Carter, a recent recruit from rural Montana, displayed extraordinary marksmanship and resolve during an intense engagement. His actions directly saved the lives of General Harlan and multiple members of his team. The room erupted in applause. Reporters scribbled furiously. One even muttered, "Rookie saves general. Front page for sure." Harlan's jaw clenched. He should have been proud, but all he could think about was the blood, the smoke, the chaos. The boy had done his duty, yes, but at a price no one outside that valley could understand. After the briefing, as Harlan walked out, a reporter called after him. "General, what do you think of Private Carter's heroics?" He stopped, his back rigid. "I think," he said slowly, "that one good shot doesn't make a man a hero. It just means he did his job and lived to tell about it." Then he walked away, leaving the press buzzing. By evening, Ethan's name was everywhere. Television, newspapers, even social media. "Rookie marksman saves U.S. general," blared across headlines. People shared his photo, his background, even a grainy clip of the mission briefing that had somehow leaked. In the barracks, soldiers crowded around the TV, laughing, cheering, clapping each other on the back. "Carter's a damn legend already," one said. "Guy's not even done basic, and he's on CNN." Another shook his head. "Yeah, but the general doesn't look too happy about it." Carter sat quietly on his bunk, watching the news replay the same line. He made the impossible shot. It didn't feel real. Sergeant Ruiz dropped onto the bunk across from him. "So, celebrity life treating you well yet?" she teased. He sighed. "Feels weird. I didn't do it for this, I know," she said. "But people need stories, Carter. You gave them one. Something to believe in. Doesn't matter if you didn't ask for it." He nodded slowly. "What about the general?" "He hasn't said anything to me since we got back." Ruiz tilted her head. "Harlan's complicated. He's been doing this longer than you've been alive. He doesn't like surprises, especially ones that make him look wrong." Carter frowned. "So I embarrassed him." She smirked. "Maybe, but you also saved his life." "I'd call it even." That night, the base was quiet. Harlan sat alone in his office, the dim light of a desk lamp casting long shadows. On the table lay two items, the official after-action report and a photo of the team taken before deployment. Everyone was smiling in that picture, even Carter, with his nervous half-grin. Harlan poured himself a cup of cold coffee and stared at the report again. Every line praised Carter's precision, his bravery, his instincts. Words like commendation and promotion consideration were underlined by the brass. He closed the file. For decades, he had preached discipline, hierarchy, and control. Soldiers followed orders. They didn't improvise. But Carter had defied that rule. He'd acted on instinct, broken protocol, and saved the mission. And Harlan couldn't shake the thought. Maybe the system needed soldiers like that. Maybe he'd been wrong all along. A knock came at the door. "Enter," he said. Carter stepped in, standing at attention, his arm still bandaged. "Permission to speak, sir?" Harlan gestured for him to sit. "You already have the country speaking for you, Private. Go ahead." Carter hesitated. "Sir, I just wanted to say, I wasn't trying to make a name for myself. I did what I thought was right. That's all." Harlan studied him for a long moment. The kid's sincerity was disarming. No arrogance, no bravado. Just raw honesty. "I know you did," Harlan said finally. "You followed your gut. And in war, sometimes that's the only thing that keeps men alive." He leaned back. "But you also broke direct orders, Carter. You acted without command approval." Carter swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." Harlan stood, walking to the window. "Most times, that would earn you a court-martial. But not this time." He turned back. "Because this time, you were right." Carter's eyes widened slightly. "Don't make me regret saying that," Harlan added with a half-smile. You've got talent, kid. Real talent. But talent without humility is a bullet waiting to ricochet. Remember that. Carter nodded. Yes, sir. As he turned to leave, Harlan's voice stopped him. One more thing, Private. Yes, sir? Next week, you're being transferred to an advanced sniper program. Special operations. You've earned it. Carter blinked in shock. I don't know what to say. Harlan smiled faintly. Try thank you, before I change my mind. Carter grinned. Thank you, sir. When he left, Harlan exhaled slowly, the faintest trace of pride softening his features. He looked once more at the photo on his desk, at the boy who'd walked into the mission a rookie and walked out a legend. Outside, the base was alive with night sounds, crickets, engines, distant laughter. Carter stood alone under the stars, the wind cool on his face. The noise of the world, the headlines, the praise, it all felt far away now. He closed his eyes and saw the valley again, the gunfire, the chaos, the shot that had changed everything. He didn't feel like a hero. He just felt lucky to be alive. But somewhere deep inside, he also knew this was only the beginning. The story wasn't over. Not for him. Not for the general. Not for the lessons that came when impossible things became real. The rookie who made the shot had a new target now, the kind that couldn't be seen through a scope. He wanted to prove that lightning didn't just strike once. The winter air at Fort Ashland cut like glass, cold, sharp, and relentless. A thin layer of frost coated the shooting range, crunching under every boot. The wind howled across the open field, scattering dust and memories alike. Private Evan Carter stood in formation with a dozen other soldiers, each one older, tougher, and far more decorated than he was. Every man here had seen battle. Some had scars to prove it. Others carried invisible ones. This wasn't basic training anymore. This was the Special Operations Sniper Qualification Course, the proving ground where the best of the best were forged. At the front stood Major Franklin Doss, the lead instructor. His stare could cut steel. He'd been in the game for 20 years, longer than Carter had been alive. Doss paced slowly, his boots crunching in the frost. Gentlemen, he began, his voice deep and deliberate, this course will break most of you. You'll shoot in rain, snow, wind, and exhaustion. You'll sleep 3 hours a night, if you're lucky. You'll miss birthdays, meals, and maybe sanity. If you pass, you'll join an elite fraternity of shooters who never miss. He stopped, letting the silence bite. If you fail, no shame in that. Most do. Then his eyes landed on Carter. The major smirked. And you, the rookie who made the headlines. A few of the men turned their heads. Some grinned, others sneered. The legend had arrived. Tell me, Private, Doss continued, you think that lucky shot makes you special? Carter stood tall, resisting the instinct to flinch. No, sir. Then why are you here? Because luck runs out, Carter said evenly. Skill doesn't. Doss's eyebrow twitched, a ghost of approval. We'll see about that. The first week was a storm of drills. The recruits ran obstacle courses until their legs turned to stone, carried 50-pound packs through freezing mud, and fired in every condition imaginable. Carter learned quickly that fame meant nothing here. His so-called legend didn't earn him respect. It made him a target. Hey, celebrity, one veteran sniper, Sergeant Mackey, taunted during a long run. How's it feel knowing you'll wash out before week 2? Carter ignored him, focusing on his breathing. He'd learned in combat that words couldn't kill you, only doubt could. When they reached the range, Doss barked. Positions. Targets were set at impossible distances. 1,200 meters, then 1,400. Wind gusts shifted unpredictably. The air shimmered from the cold. Each trainee took turns firing. Most missed. Carter lay prone, adjusting his scope. The crosshairs danced with every heartbeat. He exhaled slowly and squeezed. Crack. The distant metal pinged a second later, dead center. The instructors exchanged glances. Das said nothing, just marked the score and muttered, "Beginner's luck." Carter didn't argue. He simply loaded another round and fired again. Another ping. By the end of the day, his accuracy was unmatched. But instead of celebration, there was only silence. The others avoided him now, not out of jealousy, but unease. The legend might actually be real. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, General Harlan sat in a Pentagon conference room, surrounded by officers and analysts. The brass had turned Carter into a case study, the rookie phenomenon. His name had become a talking point in every meeting, every recruitment pitch. One colonel leaned back, smirking. "With all due respect, General, you can't build a doctrine around luck. The boy got lucky, that's all." Harlan's eyes narrowed. "You weren't there." "Neither were most of the public," the colonel countered. "And they're the ones writing the checks. The story's gotten out of hand. He's being called America's miracle marksman. It's making the rest of us look sloppy." Harlan leaned forward, voice low. "I watched him take that shot in zero visibility, under fire, with his team's lives on the line. You call that luck? That's instinct, discipline, and guts. You don't teach that. You witness it." The room fell silent. Harlan continued, "You want to test him? Fine, but don't dismiss him. Men like that don't come around often. And when they do, you either shape them or you lose them." Back at Fort Ashland, Carter was being shaped brutally. Das had taken a personal interest in him, pushing harder each day. Extra drills, fewer breaks, longer hours. It wasn't training anymore. It was war by another name. During one night exercise, Das stood behind Carter as he lined up a shot on a moving target half a mile away. The wind howled. His hands ached. He hadn't slept in 30 hours. "You're tired, Private," Das said. "Hungry, cold, eyes burning. You think that shot in the valley matters now?" Carter's jaw tightened. "No, sir, then prove it." Evans steadied his breath, adjusted for wind, and fired. The bullet found its mark, perfectly. Das's expression didn't change, but his voice dropped to a murmur. "Not bad. But you're still shooting like you've got something to prove." "Maybe I do," Carter said quietly. Das looked at him for a long moment. "Then figure out what that is. Because if you don't, someone else will." The weeks passed, and Carter began to change. His movements grew sharper, his instincts more refined. But the fame that had once followed him now felt distant, meaningless. He wasn't chasing headlines anymore. He was chasing mastery. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Mackey approached him by the fire pit. The veteran's usual smirk was gone. "You know," Mackey said, "when you showed up, I wanted to see you fail." Carter glanced over. "Yeah, I noticed." Mackey shrugged. "But you didn't. And you didn't quit either. That counts for something." Carter smiled faintly. "Appreciate it." Mackey grinned. "Don't get soft on me now, hero. We've got the final test tomorrow. Rumor says Das is bringing in some big shot observer. Bet it's for you." Carter frowned. "Observer?" But Mackey just chuckled. "Guess we'll see." The next morning, the trainees assembled before dawn. The final test was legendary, a simulated operation combining stealth, marksmanship, endurance, and coordination. It lasted 18 hours straight. They were dropped into a mock combat zone deep in the woods. Their objective: locate and neutralize 5 hidden targets without being detected. As Carter checked his gear, he noticed a black SUV parked near the range. Out stepped General Harlan. Their eyes met for the first time since that night in the valley. Carter's pulse spiked. Harlan gave a small nod, not a greeting, but a challenge. Doss turned to the group. "You'll be watched today," he said. "Not for glory, not for medals, for truth. Let's find out who you really are." The exercise was brutal. Carter moved through mud and snow, crawling for hours through thorned brush, his breath freezing in clouds. Every sound mattered. Every shadow threatened failure. He took his first shot after 7 hours. One clean, silent strike from 1,500 meters. The target fell. No detection. By hour 12, his hands were bleeding, his body trembling. He'd hit 4 or 5 targets. Only one remained, deep in a ravine surrounded by fog. Carter lay prone on the ridge, calculating the impossible angle. The wind was erratic, the distance extreme. His rifle scope fogged with every exhale. "Come on," he whispered to himself. "One more." He adjusted the scope, exhaled slowly, and fired. Crack, the echo faded. The target didn't move. Miss. Carter cursed under his breath. He adjusted again, checked the wind, and fired a second time. This time, the target's red light blinked, hit confirmed. He collapsed into the mud, breathing hard, relief flooding through him. Hours later, the results were posted. Carter's score wasn't just the highest in his class. It broke the base record. As the trainees dispersed, Doss approached him. "You did it, Carter. Congratulations." Carter nodded, exhausted but proud. "Thank you, sir." Behind Doss, General Harlan stepped forward, clapping once. "Impressive," he said. "Seems the legend wasn't just talk." Carter straightened. "Sir, I'm just trying to be better than yesterday." Harlan smiled faintly. "Then you're already ahead of most men I know." He extended a hand. Carter hesitated, then took it. "Welcome to the real world, soldier," Harlan said. "The easy part's over." That night, Carter sat alone on the barracks roof, watching the stars shimmer above the snow-dusted trees. His body ached, but his spirit felt alive. He'd come a long way from the rookie who didn't belong, but deep down, he knew this was only another beginning. Because somewhere out there, Spectre, the ghost who started it all, was still alive. And whether he liked it or not, fate wasn't finished with him yet. The desert stretched endlessly beneath the burning sun, a landscape of dust and silence. Heat shimmered over the cracked earth, and the faint outline of a military convoy crept across the horizon like ghosts on wheels. Inside one of the armored vehicles, Private Evan Carter sat with his rifle across his knees, the metal hot against his palms. The hum of the engine vibrated through the floor, steady and relentless, like the heartbeat of war itself. It had been 6 months since he'd graduated from Fort Ashland's sniper course. 6 months since that impossible test. Since then, he'd seen deployments in 2 countries, each mission harder than the last. But none of them compared to this one. This one was personal. The briefing replayed in his head. Objective: capture or eliminate Spectre, the elusive insurgent commander responsible for dozens of U.S. casualties, including the ambush where Carter had made the shot that changed everything. This time, it wasn't about proving himself. It was about closure. Across from him sat Major Doss, calm and unreadable as always. Beside him, General Harlan, now in combat gear for the first time in years, stared out the window, his eyes lost in the dunes. It wasn't common for a general to join a field operation, but this wasn't a common mission. Intelligence had confirmed Spectre's location in the ruins of a desert village near the border. Harlan had insisted on being there. "Something's not right," Doss muttered, checking his GPS tablet. "Spectre's too smart to stay in one place this long." Harlan nodded. "Maybe he's tired of running. Or maybe he's setting the stage. Carter adjusted his scope, the same rifle he'd used since that first mission, the one that had made him a legend and a target. Either way, he said quietly, I'm ready. Harlan turned toward him, studying his face. You remind me of someone I knew a long time ago. Young, determined. Thought he could carry the world on his shoulders. Carter met his gaze. Did he make it? Harlan looked back out the window. For a while. As dusk fell, the convoy halted 5 kilometers from the village. The team dismounted, moving silently under the bleeding sky. The sand cooled beneath their boots, and the world dimmed to shades of red and gold. The plan was simple. Doss would lead the main assault team through the east side, while Carter and his spotter would take position on a rocky ridge overlooking the area. Harlan would coordinate from the command post. Carter climbed the ridge with his gear, every muscle aching, every breath steady. The village below looked abandoned, broken walls, collapsed roofs, and shadows that seemed to breathe. He lay prone behind his rifle, adjusting for wind. His spotter, Corporal Diaz, whispered, Got movement, northwest corner. Could be a patrol. Carter peered through the scope. 3 figures moved cautiously through the ruins. The lead man carried a radio. The others held rifles. They're setting up perimeter, Carter murmured. Spectre's expecting company. Diaz exhaled. Think he knows we're coming? Carter's voice hardened. He always knows. Hours passed. The wind picked up, carrying fine dust that clung to their faces. Night fell completely, and the stars burned cold above them. At 0200, Doss's voice crackled in Carter's earpiece. All teams in position. On my mark, we move. Carter steadied his rifle. He could feel his pulse sinking with the countdown. 3, 2, 1. Move. The silence shattered. Muffled gunfire erupted in the village, flashes of light slicing through the darkness. Carter scanned through his scope, identifying targets, calling them out with precision. 2 tangos, east wall. Drop them. Crack. 1 fell. Crack. The second hit the dirt. Good hits, Diaz whispered. Then, a sudden explosion ripped through the southern alley, throwing debris into the air. The radio hissed with static and screams. Team Bravo is down. Ambush, repeat ambush. Carter's heart pounded. It's a trap. He swept his scope across the rooftops and froze. A silhouette stood framed against the moonlight, tall and still, a rifle aimed toward Doss's position. Spectre. Carter didn't need confirmation. The way the man moved, the stillness, the control. It was him. Target spotted, rooftop, north building. Carter called. Take the shot. Doss barked through the comms. Carter inhaled, held his breath, and squeezed. Crack. The figure moved impossibly fast. The bullet struck brick, showering sparks. Spectre ducked out of sight. Missed, Diaz said. Carter cursed softly. He's baiting us. Trying to draw my fire. Then don't give him the second chance, Doss ordered. But Carter couldn't let it go. Not this time. He adjusted his angle, crawling to a better vantage point. His hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from the storm building inside him. Through the scope, he saw movement again, this time closer, leaping from rooftop to rooftop like a shadow. Come on, Carter whispered. Show yourself. And then Spectre did, stepping into the open, raising his rifle, looking straight toward the ridge. For a fleeting second, their eyes met through the scopes. A mutual recognition. The hunted and the hunter, finally face to face. Carter fired. Crack! The shot echoed across the valley. Spectre staggered, but didn't fall. He turned, clutching his shoulder, and fired back. The bullet whizzed past Carter's head, close enough to hear it tear the air. Diaz shouted, "We're blown. Reposition." But Carter didn't move. He chambered another round, breathing hard. The man who'd haunted his dreams for months was right there, bleeding, but alive. "Come on," he muttered. "Not this time." He fired again and again. Each shot closer, more desperate. Spectre vanished behind the collapsing wall. The comms erupted with Doss's voice. "Carter, fall back." "That's an order." Carter hesitated, then reluctantly backed off, sliding down the ridge. Explosions lit the night as the assault team pressed forward. By dawn, the village was in ruins. Smoke rose from burning debris. When Carter reached the command post, his uniform was caked with dust and blood. Harlan was waiting, arms crossed. "Spectre?" he asked. Carter shook his head. "Gone. Again." Doss approached, eyes cold. "You disobeyed a direct order, soldier. You risked the team." Carter's voice cracked with anger. "You don't get it. I had him. He was right there." Harlan stepped between them. "Enough." Carter turned to him, desperate. "Sir, you saw the footage. He's not just some ghost. He's real. He's watching us. And he's not done." Harlan's gaze softened slightly. "You think you're the only one haunted by him? He's taken good men from all of us. But obsession is how he wins. Don't give him that." Carter looked away, jaw tight. "Then tell me how to stop him." Harlan paused. "You already know how. You just haven't accepted what it'll cost." That night, as the camp settled into uneasy silence, Carter sat alone outside his tent, staring into the dark horizon. He replayed the moment in his mind. Spectre's eyes, cold and deliberate, the faint nod he'd given before disappearing. It wasn't just a fight anymore. It was a promise. Behind him, Harlan approached quietly. "You're not sleeping," he said. Carter didn't look up. "Neither are you." The general chuckled dryly. "Fair point." He sat beside him, the desert wind whispering around them. "You did good today," Harlan said softly. "You kept your team alive. I failed the mission." "Maybe," Harlan said. "Or maybe the mission isn't over." Carter finally turned. "You think he's still out there?" Harlan looked toward the east, where the first hints of dawn touched the sand. Men like Spectre don't die easily. But when they do, it's never by accident. Carter's grip tightened on his rifle. "Then I'll be ready." Harlan nodded. "You'd better be. Because something tells me, next time, he won't be the one doing the hunting." The wind rose, carrying the scent of smoke and memory. The desert was quiet again, but the silence no longer felt peaceful. It felt like the pause before a storm. Somewhere beyond the dunes, in the wreckage of the village, a wounded man limped through the shadows, clutching his bleeding arm, his lips curling into a faint, knowing smile. Spectre was alive, and this time he was coming for Carter. The night was absolute in the desert, a blanket of darkness, pierced only by the flickering light of distant fires and the faint glow of the moon. The ruined village sprawled before them, an eerie skeleton of walls, broken beams, and smoke curling into the starless sky. Private Evan Carter lay prone on a ridge, heart pounding, hands steady on his rifle. Every muscle ached, every nerve was alert. Months of training, endless drills, the entire Special Operations Sniper program had led to this moment. Spectre was close. Intelligence confirmed it. Every movement in the village suggested he was preparing for a counterattack. And Carter knew, if Spectre struck first, no one would survive. Beside him, Corporal Diaz whispered, "Sir, he's moving northwest. Roof of the central hall." Carter nodded, scanning through his scope. The ruined building loomed like a fortress, shadows hiding every corner. Then, a figure emerged, tall, deliberate, a rifle in hand, moving like a predator. Spectre. Carter's pulse steadied. Every breath measured. Every heartbeat counted. General. Doss's voice crackled in his earpiece. All teams in position. Extraction in 30 minutes. You get the shot, or we lose him. Harlan's voice followed. Calm, but edged with tension. Carter, remember everything. Don't force it. Wait for your moment. Carter swallowed hard. Copy that, sir? Hours stretched like eternity. Carter watched Spectre move among the ruins, dodging and weaving, checking angles, constantly aware of every shadow. The man was clever, patient, deadly. Diaz broke the silence. Sir, he's setting up. Looks like he knows we're here. Carter didn't speak. He tightened his grip, adjusted his scope, and calculated the impossible. Wind speed, elevation, distance, every variable shifting like the desert sands. Breathe. Wait. Minutes passed. Spectre paused at a collapsed wall, surveying the area. For a fleeting moment, he looked directly toward Carter's ridge. Now or never. Carter exhaled, squeezed the trigger, and fired. The bullet cut through the air, a whisper of precision. Ping! It struck the wall just ahead of Spectre, a warning. He flinched, ducked, and vanished behind the rubble. Diaz whispered, He knows we're not bluffing. He's tightening the perimeter. Carter recalculated. He had only one shot left. One chance to end months of pursuit, months of fear, months of obsession. General, he muttered, I'm ready. Harlan's voice came firm, almost gentle. Evan, make it count. And trust yourself. Carter moved to a higher vantage point, crawling through loose rubble, sweat and dust caking his skin. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from anticipation. The target was almost impossible. Hidden, moving, aware. Through the scope, he saw Spectre emerge from the shadows, rifle aimed at the approaching extraction team. The enemy was about to strike. Carter exhaled slowly. This is it. He aligned the crosshairs, factoring in the distance, the wind, the slight tremor in his hands. He remembered every lesson, every failed shot, every drill that brought him here. Steady, 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 the trigger clicked. Time seemed to stop. The bullet flew. It struck Spectre squarely in the chest. The figure stumbled, rifle slipping from his hands. He fell onto the rubble, motionless. Silence followed, not the absence of noise, but a presence, heavy and absolute. Diaz whispered, awed, He's down. You got him, sir. Carter exhaled, relief flooding him. The months of obsession, of training, of fear, all culminating in this one impossible moment. Harlan appeared at the ridge, moving quickly through the rubble. You did it, he said quietly. I didn't believe it could be done, but you made it happen. Carter didn't respond immediately. He only watched as Doss's team moved in, securing Spectre and the area. The nightmare that had haunted the military for months was finally over. Later, back at base, Carter sat alone in the debrief room. His rifle rested across the table. Bandages covered scrapes and burns, but the exhaustion in his eyes was nothing compared to the weight on his shoulders. The door opened quietly. Harlan entered, his boots echoing in the empty room. He looked older than Carter remembered, fatigue etched into his face, but a rare glint of pride in his eyes. You did more than take a shot, Harlan said. You ended it. You saved lives. You proved something most of us never would. Carter's voice was hoarse. I did what I had to do. Harlan shook his head. No, son. You did what nobody else could. And that's why legends are born. For the first time, Carter saw the general, not as an imposing figure, but as a man who had lived through the impossible, and now recognized it in another. Harlan reached into his pocket and handed Carter a folded letter. "This is for you. Commendation, promotion, all the formalities. But more than that, it's a reminder. You proved what determination and courage look like. Don't forget it." Carter unfolded the letter. His name, rank, and a formal commendation were printed. But beneath that, Harlan had written in his own hand, "You believed it could be done when I didn't. That makes you not just a soldier, but a hero." Carter's hands shook slightly. He folded it carefully, slipping it into his chest pocket. In the following days, Carter's story made headlines across the nation. The rookie who saved the general, then tracked and eliminated Spectre, became a symbol of courage, skill, and relentless determination. But Carter remained humble. He didn't seek glory. He didn't crave attention. Every story, every headline, every interview reminded him of what really mattered: the lives saved, the team protected, and the moment where impossible became reality. Harlan, now back in his office, watched the coverage silently. He reflected on everything he had doubted, every limit he had believed existed. And he realized that sometimes it isn't experience or strategy that wins a war. It's heart, courage, belief. And sometimes it's a rookie willing to take the shot no one else dared to make. Months later, Carter returned to Montana for a brief leave. Standing on the porch of his family home, he looked out at the wide open fields, the same sky he'd grown up under. The world was quiet here, peaceful, safe. He held Harlan's letter in his hand, reading it again. A small smile tugged at his lips. For a moment, he allowed himself to feel the weight of it all, the missions, the fear, the triumph. Then he looked toward the horizon. The world was still vast, still unpredictable. And somewhere, deep in the shadows, challenges would always wait. But Evan Carter knew now what he had learned in the valley, on the ridge, and in the desert. Impossible could be done. All it took was courage, focus, and the willingness to make the shot. And this time, he'd never hesitate.